Good morning, everyone. This was the time I was supposed to complete my talk, so it gets as interesting as it can get. And this is a great audience, so almost like a workshop, I guess, in this space. So it's pretty mouthful, the topic. So I wasn't quite aware of how the audience is, so please raise hands when you have a question. So it's very free-flowing. We are too many people here, right? So we can all work this through. So let me just talk a little bit about the title. So this is a resource description framework. What exactly that is, and I'll explain to you a little bit about it, although I don't have too much time to go into depth of that, but just why that was more applicable to this problem that we had. And the problem was to share and to discover biomedical resources that are always being produced by research. So what do the bench scientists really need? They need better resources, and they need the expertise. They want to have results that can be reproducible, so they can actually quantify their science. They need the credit, they need the citations, which means share the knowledge so other people can cite you. That is the social capital you require. And also, in terms of the data that they produce, that data needs to be interoperable. So if there's a format they're producing the data in, it should be in multiple forms so other resources and researchers can consume, and then the citations can happen. So in the essence, create efficient science. So Harvard Clinical Translational Science Center, let me talk a little bit about it. It's one of the CTSA's awardees, and the goal is to promote more of research around the clinical translational science. So basically equip the researchers to collaborate more, to share more, and develop when needed. So, let's share versus build everything from scratch. So in that context, back in 2010, there was a 2-year funding to create this portal, which should be across universities, and it was initially 9 universities, their core labs, to share the information. And today, it's supported by Harvard Catalyst because that grant, initial one, has expired. But there was value in this and keeping this portal running, and now it's expanded to, I think, give or take 1 or 2, about 40 institutions. And it's also now getting more worldwide adoption. So we recently inflated a server in Belgium, University of Ghent, and we're doing one in Japan as well. So the common problems, let me go a little deep into that. So when you have a researcher, and now they have produced some antibodies, some reagents, some plasmids, a mouse model, they need to publish this because they are stipulated by NIH to now share this. So they probably put it on a website or somewhere, so which is not getting to all those first points that I was talking about in terms of citations and exposure. So in that area, we thought that let's create an open source publishing platform, which means that anybody, anywhere, without any login and access, could actually look and find your resource. So you need to create that network, which is common, and it should be owned by the institution, because you want to give autonomy to the participating institution on their data, so they can expose the data, update the data, curate the data to the best of the knowledge. And as I mentioned, it should support also multiple publishing formats, like it could be HTML, PDF, CSV, whatever have you. So whenever we start to build the systems, and we have some software engineers here, you need to have a common language to describe your data. And so for that, we created an ontology backbone in cooperation with Oregon Health Sciences University. We work with the library sciences to create common ontology, how to describe resources data. And a lot of this was taxonomies that were pulled from existing neuroscience field, depending on the domain of the resource. And I have to add that this ontology is so flexible that currently we brought in induced pluripotent stem cells, which are called iPS cells. They're the new breakthrough in the stem cells versus the embryonic cells that used to be before. These are synthetically generated cells, which will, in the long run, help in tissue generation. And they are personalized because they're created from your own human cells, so very personalized. So we brought this new resource on, so we had to create ontology for this resource because it's brand new. It's just 2 or 3 years old. So again, we contracted with OHSU to add the component of iPS cells on top of. So the flexibility of ontologies is there the way it was built. So then when you have all this, you have the data, you have the technology, now you need a search that goes across all these universities, and then you can bring up the information. So it's more than a query language. You really need an indexing of that information, which is real time. So this is a sample network architecture. Although at the bottom, you can realize there are now 40 institutions, so it's like a small subset. So on top is like, I call it like the mothership of indexing. That's like the central search. But under that, there are individual searches for institution. And why that's important, because some of the institutions are using Eagle Eye, but they did not want to put it on a national platform yet. So they're using inter-institutional search. So all their researchers can go in, put their data in, look at others' data. So sometimes you don't know what's under your own hood. Like some of the examples we got that I didn't know there was a mouse model right in the laboratory next door, and here I was doing my own experiments. And these have been actual use cases brought to us. So it's for that purposes, they just kept the search very local. But then when they felt that we are ready for the national platform, then they give us an email that centrally index us, and then they come into our list of searches. So the 40 other ones that I mentioned are in our central indexing. And I always run into conferences where they say, oh, I'm using Eagle Eye. I said, oh, we don't have you. Oh, we're not ready for you indexing yet. So also there is a data entry, which we call suite. It's a semantic web entry. So again, it's very local, as you see, to every institution. So they have their own data entry. It looks the same, almost similar, I would say, but it's adapted to that institution. They will have their logo, their look and feel, and even the data that they're collecting. So it's ontology run form. So it's not a form where you can add or subtract fields. It's like, I need these 7 resources, and this is how dynamically the form comes up. So that's why it's very much ingrained to the institution. And the access for user login is, again, given to the institution for that. And it follows a workflow pattern. So if you know anything about data curation, there are steps to that. Like put in the data, then you put it in a curated stage, then you have the workflow for publishing, and sometimes it's a draft, and sometimes you want to even pull it back or delete it or withdraw it. So all this workflow are enabled through the suite data entry tool. Again, very much autonomous way of doing it. And the backbone on the side, which you have, is the Eagle Eye ontology. And that is kind of common. If I can point it, and there you are. So this Eagle Eye ontology is like the backbone. So all these resources have to be mapped. So there's a little bit of work in the beginning where you're mapping your own data to the way and the format of Eagle Eye, and that's where we help them. So for now, it's kind of caters to almost all the data points, but we keep on extending it as needed. So talking about RDF, in a simple manner, if you would do a search for something called, let's say, jaguar, it could be an animal, which runs very fast. It could be a car, or it could be an operating system. So just to emphasize that, usually searches are very syntactic, so it's basically term to term. But then you need some semantics behind it, that what is the relationship for this with what I'm looking for? So that's where the RDF comes in. And it's actually, it was, Tim Lee-Brenner, the World Wide Web Consortium. So it's one of the, I would say, specifications from that for any of the web resources that surface. If you put in a search for a ticket or airlines ticket, you see the semantics of this airlines is giving you this much money, all you never asked for it, but they understand that you might be looking to buy the ticket. So that's the semantics behind the search that Google has adopted also. So each data primarily is described as triples. So you have a subject, you have a predicate, and you have an object. So the subject and the object, the relationship in the middle is a predicate. So what's the relationship for a car with a Jaguar? It's a fast car, it's a beautiful car, things like that. And how that works in Eagle Eye is, so this is a snapshot of, I'm calling it central search, because there are multiple ways to search in Eagle Eye. So the central search, for example, right here, I searched for a term called clinical trial. So what I got was not just, so each is a data point, and with the description of the data. So it's not just spitting out 331 results over here, but also giving you the semantics of the results. It's almost like grouping. The clinical trial appears in human study, which is actually the clinical trial protocol, and there are 125 instances of that. And then also some instruments that were used in clinical trial or could be used. And then a protocol is like basically the algorithm that was used. and then reagents that were used, some research opportunities that are existing, services, software, core laboratories that are conducting clinical trials. So when you get the information for clinical trial, you can actually go to the bucket that you actually want. So it could be, is it a car, is it an animal, things like that. So the other, as I said, there are multi ways to search. The second way to search was, we found there were a lot of common ways people were searching. So instead of creating the filter that you just saw and the things on the left, we created buckets for that. It's like a quick way to kind of bucket the resources. So stem cells and core, again, depending on how many searches people were conducting. So we created a quick, we call top categories of searches. And again, this kind of relates, so iPS cells will be actually in the stem cell bucket. So again, iterating more on it. So this is, so one of the beauty of RDF data is that it's linked open data, or LOD, which means it can link with other data. I don't know if you've seen that there's usually a term, if you go to Wikipedia or somewhere else, the linked open data, you'll see a big cloud. And in the cloud, you have different linked open data, or LODs as they call it. And they are from all different areas, from marketing, from consumers, everybody. So think of Eagle Eye as a dot in that cloud. So just the way the data is propositioned, it can connect to any of the semantics on the web. And then you can have your own relationships occur with that. And it's quite easy to do that if you participate in that. So for that matter, we have created an RDF download. And this RDF download is for the whole dump of the information. Today, you can go in and you can do that. Or it is by the institutions where they want an access to their own data, so you can have that. Or it could be also by the resource type that you're looking for. So multiple ways to get the information. And when you go to the form, there's actually a format. You can do HTML or other ways to get the data. So as I said, the resources that are supported today are these, and the last one is the latest ones, iPS cells. But these are all high-level terms, or high-level resource types, as we call it. Under each of them, there is the ontology map and the parent and then the child. So there's a lot of information that's stored. But the top categories of the resource types are primarily these. And this is a list of institutions. I don't expect you to read that. But you can see them over here as a dot. And then it's growing. I can say this dot is not very much updated yet. But we do have, in UPenn, I was just speaking to you, there's a dot for UPenn as well. So it's quite easy to participate, and it's eagleeye.net. It's with a dash and with a dot and with a net, so it's not org. And so that's something to remember. And when I show that map, I say, I'm going to come back next time and have a world map, and then you can see other countries as well. So the value, pretty much what Eagle Eye brings to this community of translational science. So what basically was intention was to create the cross collaborations, which is not always ideal. You have basic research in their own box, and you have clinical research in their own box. So as you saw, the clinical trial was an example. So as you see, and across that, so you can see what's going on in the research on the other side, and this is what you need. So it creates cross-pollination. And the other thing, so the first column here is basically for the researchers. So it gives them a lot of visibility, almost like a national visibility to their resources, puts it up there right away, and also helps them to find the researchers who are in the similar domain or something collaborative they could look for. And the middle one is for the institutions, because as I said, right hand doesn't know what left is doing, so there's a lot of duplication of resources. So this is to avoid that. And also, whatever resources you have today, basically you want to maximize them. You want more people to use them. So that way, sometimes it's just taking up space in your freezer, so kind of like push it out and get some social capital out of it. And I can just say there's also a cost model. We work with nonprofits like Science Exchange, AdGene, who actually just take a shipping fee, and then they kind of like do the work and take it off your freezers. And then inform basically purchasing decisions, like what you need to buy versus what you just need to share and get. So on the common good, or the bigger picture, is basically fostering, accelerating science and creating that cross inter-institutional and intra-institutional collaborations, and in the essence, reducing really the research, the discoveries and therapies we want to bring to market and to the patients. We want to reduce that time. So the big question is, how can I participate and contribute as a researcher? Well, I would say go to the search tool, try to find the resources, try to share your own resources over there, find out if your institution has a node. If they don't have a node, then we can go take you to the training node where you can go and kind of get a feel of it. And if you're a technologist, you can download the software and the documentation. And if you're a technologist, we would love to have you as an open source community to build. And there are a couple of examples at NYU, Langhorne Medical Center. They wanted to have a user login behind some of their resources because it was a lot of animal rights, and they didn't want everybody to see what they had as mouse and mice. So they created a user login access for a part of their resources. Now we can use the same user login if somebody else needs it. So that's why it kind of like giving back. And also with the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Center, they created almost a small LIMS system because they wanted more information in their catalog for their laboratory data. So it's easy for the institutions now, it's very easy to join. All you need to do is install an Eagle Eye node. You could do it in your virtual space, or we also have an image in the Amazon Web Services, so in the AWS cloud, and that takes a couple of hours, but if you want to do your own existing servers, then that's another option. And start to collect the data through the data entry tool. There are tutorials available, we guide you through them, and you can start the data collection, and then when you're ready to join the network, hopefully you should have some data before you join the network. And then you say, yes, index me, and then you're up there on the national. Then we do some communications. We have recently started a very active social media team, which is actually twittering right now. And they do a lot of promotions for your site as well. The other second part is if you do not have a node and you do not have any server to put in your institution, but you really feel these resources are very niche and boutique, then we have a shared Harvard node. We have about 25,000 resources from similar situation researchers, and so we welcome your data to bring in. But the way it will look up in the search, it would not look up by a lab. Well, there will be a lab, but it won't be in an institution. It will just say shared collection, and in that, then it will be your name in your lab. It would look like that. The other very unique way we did recently, about a year back, is with North Carolina State. There was a statewide mandate to cover all their 17 universities under Eagle Eye umbrella, but they wanted to have a regional network. So the way the big architecture I showed you on top as search, that's what they have actually at their regional search. So they have a regional search, and so we created an extra tier for them. So they have these 17 institution regional search, and of course then Eagle Eye search on top. So it was a challenge for us to do it that way, but we've done it, and it's working very well. And they had an AMIA presentation recently, and they're getting, some award. And it's a part of the Reach North Carolina initiative to show how they can maximize the resources. So it's good for the development of the state in general in terms of this research. So that's about it. I hope I've stayed away a little bit more technical and jargony, but any questions? Yes?
So is this a fee-based service or is it a subscription or what exactly?
It's actually a four-letter word. I call it FREE. It's absolutely free. Zach Kahane, who's a PI, he always says you can have a pony for free, but you have to feed it and you have to clean after it. So basically, there is some investment in terms of resources for sysadmin, for example, I think it's like we said 0.05% of their time. So to help to work with us to install the node, update, and we do every quarter releases. So take those releases and also update it. And then there's also part about data collection. So you could have a data entry person who gets that. If you have a central way of collecting the data, then it's a matter of just ETLing all the information. But if you have, which is more common in the second, it's basically in the labs, then you have to have your resource navigator or somebody who goes around, gives an Excel spreadsheet, updates the data, and then puts in data entry. I have not seen instances where you have 13 labs on your site and everybody's doing the data entry. Usually it's very centralized at the university. And then there's a third option. I don't like to publicize that, but we do it for 50% of sites. We do the data entry. So you collect the information, you give us the Excel spreadsheet in the format, and then we just ETL it. So there's that piece too. We just try to make it happen and help.
So, it's
So suppose I'm looking for someone, right? And maybe my next lab has it, I just say no, right? So if I could search and find out that it's right there, right?
Correct.
Okay, so what is the difference between doing this and if I
Yeah. So that part is, and you actually answered your own question, because you have to put in the universities you think have the data. So what this is that you already have this network of 40 or 45 universities, and you can search across. And second, Google spits out a lot of information that's also on the web. It could be publications, it could be a lot of things that, and then you have to go through the articles, reading them. And the last part that I did not mention is that it covers the whole loop. So, you put in the data, you search for the data, and then there's also tributary, which we call as sharing of the information. And in the intensity of time, I kept it short, which is like when you actually go to the resource that you find, you click on it, and then it goes through another workflow where you put in your name, email address, and you request, and there's an automatic tab on it. If they don't answer, then we send reminders to them, and then we actually kind of monitor how much sharing is happening. So it's not that you find something like Google and then you have to reach out to them. And second thing is, you have all the email addresses. So when you send them, which you don't find on your Google, and who's the right person. So we have all the hierarchies. So it's connecting people to resources. So you have actually people and labs and their email addresses, but it's all like behind scenes. When you send it, it just goes to them. So I did not necessarily want you to do that, but I can do, because it's an extensible list. But let me give you a description of the kind of resources we want to bring in. We call it niche and boutique resources that are not very commonly available, because some of them you have tons of, for example, stem cells, cancer stem cells, big repositories. So it's not necessary to bring those resources in. So iPS cells are niche and boutique, and there's no right now room for them. So it's creating those kind of translational science resources. So currently we have, for example, antibodies, plasmids, instruments, services, and clinical trials, sites and services. So that way, and then a lot of basic research, cell lines.
Any other question? So how many members you have now?
How many?
How many members they are subscribed now?
We have about 40 nationally in US, 40 universities.
And inside US only, or abroad also?
Abroad, we have University of Ghent. We just have not centrally indexed them, but they're using it for their search. And there's also 2 other universities, one in Netherlands, I forget the name, and there's another one also in Belgium. So those 3 by the end of the year we'll have, and then there's one in Japan, and there's another one I think in China. We're talking to, my team does a lot of those outreaches. But US, it's about 40.